Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Rapid On right here on Rapid Television. And of course, right now, it is time for the big conversation. My name is Victor Arke.
And my name is Martha Alu. Good morning to you. I hope that you've had an amazing time this morning. And of course, yes, we have had a number of conversations this morning, the review of the papers, and now we're on to the 9 o'clock hour where we have the big conversations. These conversations are just tended towards shaping the Nigerian economic system, particularly this morning. And it is no news that we heard what the IMF has said sometime last week, projecting Nigeria's growth or Nigeria's contribution to the growth of global GDP to 1.5, which is such a remarkable number, if you ask me. And today we deliberate on that on the show.
That, of course, right now we see that the world is watching how economists are performing and talking about the whole situation, talking about the economic situation in our country, Nigeria. We do have a few things that we just might want to share with you, and talking about IMF, of course, saying that Nigeria contributes 1.5% of the GDP. And again, just like you mentioned, it is quite a very important growth for us at this point in time. And I think that also places Nigeria in a very good light, saying that we're quite ahead of Germany and all of that. Then if you just could follow through the conversation, let's have this, talking about the world watching how economies are performing, especially in a time of global uncertainty. Now, we see many countries are struggling with inflation, unemployment, and slow growth, while others are managing to push the economies forward. Now, in this context, Nigeria's recent performance stands out. Now Nigeria has been ranked 6th among the top contributors to global economic growth for 2026, and this ranking comes from the International Monetary Fund based on its latest World Economic Outlook projections. But according to the IMF, Nigeria is expected to contribute about 1.5% of global real GDP growth, placing it ahead of several major economies in the world. Now, of course, one of the big questions we keep asking is that now that we see these projections, and especially from the International Monetary Fund, we've seen that the GDP growth that is being contributed by by Nigeria is quite on the high side. How does this reflect in the everyday Nigerians? And these are some of the things that we are going to be having a conversation on with our guests. He's going to be helping us understand what this projection means, why Nigeria is ranked 6th, and of course the key factors driving this growth and what it could mean for businesses and everyday Nigerians. Well, our guest is going to be joining us just in a moment. But of course, again, just seeing the economic realities of Nigerians and looking at the projection as well of IMF, do you think that all of this relates?
Relates in what sense?
Does it translate to the reality that Nigerians actually are facing?
Well, we know that it doesn't, because if the IMF is saying that Nigeria is set to contribute about 1.5% to the growth of the global growth of GDP, it means that within our own community as well, we should experience some level of growth. We should also experience some level of ease in the economy. But regardless of that, Nigeria's fiscal deficit is set to widen. IMF projected that to 4.7 deficit. This was in 2025, driven by low oil receipts and expenditure pressures. Now, like I said this morning, on the macroeconomic level, we see that Nigeria is progressing, and some of the factors attributed to that would be the removal of fuel subsidies, stabilization of the naira, and all other factors that have been attributed to this. However, does this relate to the life of the common man? That I don't see. But I'm sure that our guests will help us break down this conversation to help us further understand what this projection means for Nigeria in general. Definitely. Good morning.
Yeah, we have our guest, Paul Alaje, Chief Economist at SPM Professionals. Welcome. Good morning to you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. The IMF rank for Nigeria among the top 6 contributors to global GDP is very significant for Nigeria. Recall that Nigeria GDP, I think in the last 10 years, has witnessed in less than 10 years, I think in the last 10 years, yes, I think around 2016, 2017, till now, has witnessed 2 recessions. Apart from that, Nigeria economy has also undergone a period of COVID. We have gone through GDP decline when we had the Russia-Ukraine war. So quite a number of things has happened to the GDP. But recently, we have seen some improvement in Nigeria's GDP growth rate in Naira terms. In Naira terms, it's important to emphasize that.
Okay.
So all of these have been the reasons why Nigeria, of course, remained really very backward. But IMF in recent reports indicated that Nigeria perhaps will be among the top 6 countries that we have global major global contributions to global GDP. I think it's good because when top international organizations speak positively of your country, among so many other things, it's expected that investors, it will boost confidence among the investment community. Investors who feel that that economy is healthy and they are able to take their funds into such environment. And I think for the sake of this and few other reasons, it's a good thing for Nigeria's economy to be positioned in this manner where people can have confidence to invest, in our nation.
All right. Dr. Paul, you have made mention of the fact that this is the perception that we have in the global community is super important because it can drive investment opportunities into Nigeria. Now, despite this positive global ranking, you'd agree with me that we still see inflation, we still see poverty and public sector bottlenecks. How can policymakers balance headline success with deeper structural challenges? Because you would agree that much more than the economic, macroeconomic perception that we have in the global scene, it's also important that there's a translation of that into the lives of the common man, which we don't see. Can you help us talk about these bottlenecks and how it can be addressed by policymakers?
Yes, I must be sincere with you. There must be that handshake between the micro and macro. Both sectors of the economy must align. They must agree. As we speak, we have seen that inflation, according to Bureau of Statistics, has dropped to about 15.15%. Many Nigerians are still wondering, but that's not exactly what they are seeing in the market. In fact, unemployment, according to the same agency, National Bureau of Statistics, revealed that unemployment is now around 4 to 5%. Nigeria will say, oh, but we are still out of job. Perhaps because people don't really understand what is being measured. What is being measured is not what we used to measure 5 years ago. Now, for inflation, we have rebased inflation numbers, and rebasing has made us to now see inflation basket from a different perspective. If we are to use the old basket, inflation will still be far above 30% today. But because we are using new basket of measurement, that is why we're having inflation came down. Recall that even November inflation number, Bureau of Statistics reviewed that inflation was 14%. Later came back and said, sorry, it's no longer 14%, it's now 17%. That's it. So what we are measuring is different from what experience will be. And in economics and econometrics, it is called a period of outlier. It will be very difficult for any policymaker to use what we are saying now as a reflection. In fact, when anybody uses that as a reflection, it tells me how much of economic knowledge, how much of economic debt they have. It shows me they are not really deep when it comes to economics. So we can say all of this to attract investors, which of course I would always support. But when we are saying all this, to say that everything is fine, then we are perhaps just mocking ourselves, in front of ourselves. Because the truth is unemployment is still very high. We are no longer using 20 hours a week. We moved from 20 hours a week to 1 hour a week. Unemployment dropped from 33% to about 5.2%, later to about 4%. But in the real sense, do we say that people got job within 2 years, where the gap with the job provision, has it accounted for about 29% reduction in unemployment? The answer, of course, is not. The answer is not. So what should we then do? What we do as policymaker is to note that there are realities and there are number adjustments here. When I say number adjustment, not fraudulently, that's not what I mean, so that I'm not quoted. Okay. So there are realities. The reality is what individual experience. Now, if you want want to rebase the economy, or we rebase the number, we rebase inflation, we should know that, yes, these things can be done on paper. These things can be done with data. But when it comes to individual life, it's practically impossible to rebase their life. What should we therefore do is those things that can make the number reflect in the life of people. So, which will include, how do we give access and opportunity to our people? How do we ensure that some of the investments we're expecting, they come to the country, and this leads to reduced unemployment in real terms? How do we ensure that we enhance the supply side? If we enhance the supply side, there will be improvement in food availability. When food availability is improved and demand remains the same, or demand grows slower than the rate of growth of supply, then prices will come down. So all of this is what we now bring, what we have seen in the numbers, to reflect in the life of the people.
All right, let's even get a few more clarity on this, because when we first talk about Nigeria being part of the top contributors to the GDP, being 6th as it is, there's this conception out there, or misconception out there as well, that also translates to meaning that Nigeria is now the 6th largest economy in the world. Is that correct? Is that correct at this point?
It's not correct. Nigeria is not the 6th. No. Okay. Don't get it twisted. Nigeria is not the 6th largest economy in the world. It is not. Is a lie. That is not true. So we are not yet the 6th largest economy in the world. We are growing. We are growing. I think we are between 15 to 20th. 15 to 20th. So we are not the 6th. I truly wish that we are the 6th largest economy in the world. Watch this. We're also lower than $1 trillion economy. Most big economy have achieved $1 trillion economy. In fact, in my recent check, I've seen that what do we call it now? Gliwice, this country where we have Warsaw, the nation with capital Warsaw, Poland. Poland is relatively small in size, and the Poland economy, and you look at the structure of the economy, they are fast moving towards $1 trillion economy. This is an economy that we used to be bigger than some years back. In recent 2 decades, we used to be bigger than Poland, but they have now surpassed us. United Arab Emirates is a country we're bigger than even 4 or 5 years ago. Today, United Arab Emirates has done almost double of our size. So when we're discussing that we are 6th largest economy, we have to be careful. We are not yet 6th largest economy. I truly pray and hope that we become the 6th largest economy. But as we speak now, that information will be very misleading, and it has no truth in it.
Let's get a difference between being the top contributor now and, of course, being the 6th largest economy.
Okay, top contributor means that your rate of growth is so let me use this as example. So if Nigeria's GDP is 1 billion naira, just for example, and we are growing that GDP by 10%. Remember, it's an example. So 10% of 1 billion is 100 million. What it means, therefore, is that our contribution that is 10%, when you check what every other person is contributing to global GDP, that our contribution is said to be higher than the percentage every other person is contributing. But when you look at our real GDP is what tells us about the position, which is 1 billion naira. The percentage increase in growth is what tells us about the contribution. How we are adding to the world GDP. So that information about Nigeria being the 6th will not be very, very correct. We hope to get there, and I certainly believe that we can get there anytime in near future.
All right. According to the IMF still, there are certain catalysts that were cited as the reason, or that boosted Nigeria's economic position, or Nigeria's economic ranking as well, some of which are fiscal adjustments of improved investor confidence. We had liberalization of the foreign exchange market, and a number of other things were cited by the IMF as a reason that we have this ranking that we have right now. Now, from your perspective as an analyst, which specific policy reforms or economic drivers do you see most responsible for this projection? And most importantly, is this development, or these developments that have been listed out, do you think that they are sustainable? Because on the list for the IMF ranking, in the last 2 to 3 years, we had seen South Africa take charge. And now with this ranking, South Africa is not on the list. Nigeria is the major African country, the 6th on the list. above countries like Brazil that used to be major contributors. So what do you think is the specific reason that we have this ranking? And do you think it's sustainable?
I think that this ranking can be sustainable. What the report says, if I can mention to you, is that Nigeria is expected to contribute 1.5% to the global GDP from the report I have. What does it actually mean? 1.5 is discussing 1 to about 1.6 trillion naira of the global GDP. Now, this report, for once, remember that we are talking of 2026 GDP. We are not talking of 2025 GDP.
Yes.
I don't know if it's the same report we have.
It's the same report.
Now, 2026, we have not really seen it. Yes, we have not really seen 2026 completely. It's an expectation that we should have 1 point. So it's an expectation that our GDP should grow. As we speak, nominally speaking, not real GDP, I will explain the two to you. Nominally speaking, our GDP is around $400 billion. Nominally speaking. Because as you have improvement in exchange rate, our exchange rate has improved to what it was last year, 1,500 to 1,390. So when you are dividing based on exchange rates, our GDP will grow. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, go on. We're with you.
So our GDP is expected to grow, even if we have not added anything, but because our exchange rate has improved. So exchange rate has improved to about 1,390. That is 1,390. And where I expect the exchange rate to actually grow to is about 1,000, 1,100, so that we can go back to what our GDP used to be. So this improvement and stability in exchange rate is largely responsible. Where do I think we should be? And remember that this comparison is purely nominal GDP, not the real GDP. Real GDP, if you make provision for real GDP, that number will still come down to about $300 billion. Why? Because when you are talking real GDP, you are now making provision for inflation. You would have to divide that nominal GDP by the inflationary pressure you have witnessed in the economy. And according to the Bureau of Statistics, it's about 15.15%. So when that provision is made, that number will further reduce from the position that I first quoted. So what is responsible for this stability of exchange rate? Another thing that we can say is responsible for this is that we have attracted some investment, especially in our stock exchange portfolio investors. We have had them come into the economy to invest. So all of these are things that perhaps IMF is observing and some other international organizations are observing, that we put confidence and that people will invest in Nigeria. Now watch this, I need to put this caveat. Is this possible to happen? Yes, but when IMF made projection, those projections made by IMF can either remain or be changed. There were times where IMF have said that Nigeria economy will not go beyond 3%. Alas, we grew above 3%. There were times where they said we grew up to 1%. Alas, we went to a recession. So it depends. How we are able to manage the economy will largely determine whether this projection will become a reality or not.
All right, Dr. Alaje, this will lead me to the very next question, because I'm setting eyes on IMF's Article 5 praise for Nigeria's reform steps. While the Article 5 praises the steps that Nigeria has taken so far to upscale its economy and, to place us on the map where we currently are, it also cautions against vulnerabilities. And you made mention of the fact that these are just mere projections, which means that there's a possibility that we get to that number, we surpass the number, or we remain way below the projections of the IMF. Can we explore together with you some of these vulnerabilities that the IMF in Article 5 was talking about, and how we can address some of these vulnerabilities to ensure that Nigeria stays put in its economic growth and reforms?
A number of them, but the one I can tell you very quickly is that we are in a pre-election year. Exchange rates plays key role in what drives exchange rate plays key role, but what drives exchange rate among so many other things is election spending. It's a pre-election year. Politicians across Nigeria are fond of spending foreign exchange. That's spending dollars for their campaigns. Well, I don't know why that is. But, this year we must desist from spending non-Naira denominated currency. Because if we do, it will affect you in the studio. It will affect me here in Lagos. It will affect quite a number of our viewers, those that are viewing today and those that view in near future, if they are Nigerians or they have things to do within the Nigerian economy. So please, politicians must lead by example. If they must spend at all, necessarily what is made provision for them in the law, it must be our local currency. This will further push confidence in the local currency and so on and so forth. Apart from this, what again can make Nigeria economy become vulnerable? We have seen increased level of insecurity in Nigeria. And only very recently, we saw what happened in Kwara State, which means insurgents is trying to find its way beyond the northern belt, because you know that Kwara State is one of the major gateway into the southwestern part of Nigeria. So government needs to really curtail insecurity. We have also seen what has happened in the southeast zone, one of the most productive zones in Nigeria, until we started seeing some level of militancy and internal crisis within that very viable region. So we need to manage insecurity, talk less of what has ravaged the entire southeast and southwest, with some part of north central. We have seen Benue and what's it called now, and Plateau, how insurgents has overrun some of our villages in those areas. So government must live up to task, up to its responsibility when it comes to security. But what we've seen in recent past is that perhaps some of these insurgents had free day in some areas. But we must also say kudos to the Nigerian military for the effort they've put in place in some areas to curtail them from having free day in some parts. But we need more. We certainly need more to protect our people. Now, apart from that, vulnerability lies in confidence. When the people lose confidence in their leaders or in the government of their country, it will certainly have tremendous negative impact on the economy. You heard yesterday or day before yesterday where the civil society group says they will occupy one of our major institutions of democracy, which is the National Assembly, for saying it will not allow electronic transfer of results, transmission of results, that result to be transferred technically manually. I think it's important for National Assembly to urgently have a rethink. If they don't, we may want to have this interview this time next year, because of the negative impact, loss of confidence that may happen to the economy. The gains we are having, and we are hoping that we sustain, because that has to do with your question on sustainability. Yeah. If we allow elections to bring, and it's not the election day itself, it's the process that leads to election. And people have lost confidence that whosoever win may not win truly and fairly. Then that definitely will affect the confidence people we have on the electioneering process. Therefore, it's important for authorities to note that if we want to get this economy to stand properly and to be placed where it belongs among the Committee of Nations, electioneering process must be objective. It must reflect people's view, and what the people want is what leaders must implement. And as at the last time I checked, majority of Nigeria, offline, online, majority of Nigeria, majority across region, the north, the south, the west, the east, the center, wants electronic transmission of results. And I think government should comply by what their people will. You see, electoral process will certainly form a major setback for us if we don't get it right. But I really hope that this time the National Assembly will do the needful for the people.
All right, thank you, Dr. Paul. Well, still according to the projections, we see that China and India are expected to generate nearly 44% of the total global growth in 2026, while of course Nigeria is expected to contribute 1.5%. What lessons do you see that we can actually draw or learn from these countries to ensure that we also grow our economy to this point?
In the 90s, China was known as a ship-to-mouth economy. You ship to mouth. It's literally what we call the Indian economy, I beg your pardon. China was known as the Father Christmas economy. What does it mean? They will take money, China will get some money and give to citizens so that, oh, let's empower you. Direct the conditional cash transfer, go to different regions and give monies to them. What China did for almost 5, 7, 8 decades. Was there a solution? The answer is no. Which country? I'm not supposed to ask you a question. You are the one to ask me a question, but permit me to ask you a question. Which country today that you know among so many other countries that is doing hand to mouth, that is conditional cash transfer in different states, and that is now what we call stomach infrastructure. You know, in that country, hand to mouth too. The country that imports what is eating, imports food. You know, the purpose of import, some of the reasons, is for people to eat. See, let me be very honest with you. Nations that cannot produce some very basic thing, we have to depend on others, especially if we don't have other viable sectors that can help you cover areas where some of these spendings are, some of these import spends are going to come from. The revenue to cover the import are going to come from. Thank God for Dangote Refinery that has helped us to a large extent. I must be very honest with you. But if Nigeria must learn a lesson, the lesson will be, how did we get it right with Naira stability? Is it just because we devalued? That's not the answer. It is because we are able to substitute our import. What account for 10% of our import was PMS. Today, we don't spend that much because we now have a Dangote refinery that produces beyond production, also exports. So how can we solve our school uniform problem? This state you are, 1 minute, this state you are, school uniforms. They are all important, mostly important, those materials. You know, we don't have Mr. Biola or Mr. Uchena or Mr. Azan Taylor. But the fabrics are important. Until we start manufacturing locally. I'm not just saying produce, manufacture. Go to farm, link farms to the industry, then link industry to the market. Forget it. Well, our contribution is 1 point. Meanwhile, 2 nations are giving 40% of the contribution. But now, from what you heard, it is growth contribution, not the entire size of the economy. We are discussing growth contribution, not the entire size of the economy. Thank you so very much.
Okay, so I wanted to just point out where you spoke about the Dangote refinery. Remember, I asked you previously, what particular policy did Nigeria introduce that brought about our growth, or this kind of contribution, 1.5 to the global GDP? So do you think Dangote refinery also played a major part in positioning us where we now are on this global ranking? That's the first question I'll ask. Secondly, you made mention of the fact, you asked us a question, even though you said you were not supposed to. You made mention of the fact that how many countries do we know actually live hand to mouth, you know, like Nigeria, and some of the policies and how we live here in this part of the world. Now, it brings to my very next question. Remember, I made mention of the fact that in the last couple of years, 2 to 3 years, Nigeria hasn't been on this ranking. And now Nigeria appears on this ranking far above certain Western countries that we know have better living conditions than citizens of Nigeria. Now, my question is this about Nigeria growing faster, or other economies of the world slowing down, or other countries, the rest of the world basically slowing down? What is your thoughts on this? Or what are your thoughts, rather?
Yes, I will start with Dangote conversation to now know whether countries are growing faster or whether we are growing, whether they are growing slower and we are growing faster. I hope I'll be able to provide clarity to some of those questions. First of all, Dangote plays significant role in this economy. Really very significant. If Dangote refinery is shut down, honestly, first of all, you start seeing queues back. You are going to see higher inflation, no matter how we be based. Hello?
Go on, we can hear you. We're with you.
Okay, so no matter how we debase inflation or the GDP, we're going to see higher inflation. We're also going to see that poverty level will surge. So Dangote refinery is key. And I am saying that we have seen what one major investment, you know, tens of billions of dollars investment in the right direction. One, to substitute for our consumption. Two, to also help export finished product to the rest of the world, what he has done to us. Therefore, why can't we replicate the same across region? Why can't government partner with those who have the means, resources, whether they are Nigerians or non-Nigerians, to invest? I give you an instance. This is a television program. Most Nigerians watch TV. If they don't watch, they watch on their phones. Can we make a policy that even if you want to produce your TV, you may not even start it in Nigeria? Can you turn Nigeria to assembling ground of all television? Can you turn Nigeria to an assembling ground of mobile phones? The implication will be tremendous. But you can keep your technology, just come and assemble. Then we will open our market to you. After all, it is said that Nigeria has huge markets. Yes, we have huge market, we have huge population, and labor in Nigeria is very cheap. If not, how can a professor be earning less than $800? A professor, how can he be earning less than $800 per month? So we are very cheap labor on one hand. We have talent on the second hand, and on the third hand, we are wondering why we are not making it, because there are no sufficient investment as is expected in the economy as we have experienced. That's it. Thirdly, it has to now do with lastly, your question, whether Nigeria economy is really growing fast. No, Nigeria growth rate has been between 3 to 5%.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Rapid on Right and Rapid Television. And we've been having an economic conversation talking about Nigeria being ranked as the 6th contributor to the global economic growth. And of course, we've been talking to Dr. Paul Alaje, who has given us some clarity on what this means for us as a nation. As it is. But of course, in concluding the conversation, what's your final thought?
First of all, apologies. We've been trying to get hold of Dr. Paul, and it's been almost impossible. However, we'll wrap up the conversation right now. And he had some very interesting perspectives to the story while we were talking about it. Because one, I want to look at it from just a point of Nigeria is growing, we're doing well in the international community, which is a very good thing, because our names reflecting on the list on the number 6 for both countries that I thought would be reflecting or should be major contributors, right? It just means that something is being done right, in the macroeconomic scene. However, my concern still remains the ability to interpret that macro growth and development into our local communities, the grassroots level, vulnerable Nigerians. If we see that Nigeria is set to, that's the growth GDP, right? If we see that it's going to contribute about 1.5%, then that should also translate in the daily lives of every Nigerian. Thankfully, Dangote Refinery has been able to contribute his own lot, and I wouldn't say it's a small portion he contributed, because this morning on the show we reiterated the fact that it's been a while since we had queues in fuel stations, scarcity of fuel, inflation. This has been able to help us stabilize the economy to a certain extent, especially when it comes to the oil and gas industry. So if one man has the possibility of doing that, think about replicating the same pattern of production in our country, then we most likely will be contributing about 3%. That's shooting very high, but we might be able to contribute about that number in the next couple of years if we set our policies right and we are able to contribute, or we are able to influence decisions, influence policies that can contribute to the overall growth of the nation. So yes, it's a good thing. Investment will most likely come into Nigeria, seen as we have been projected by the IMF, one of the major economic platforms that normally will release this. It just means that if we do the right things, we definitely will be able to shoot up beyond that projection.
Definitely, and I do hope as well that we can fix our infrastructural gap. That's also one of the major challenges that we've been facing as a nation, Nigeria. With that being said, this is all we're going to be taking on the conversation this morning. I do remember that you can follow us on our social media pages across all platforms at Rapid TV, and you can get to rewatch all our episodes at our YouTube platform at Official Rapid TV, and wherever you are in the world, you can always get to watch us every day using our website www.arabianradiotv.com. Until tomorrow, my name is Victor. Okay.
And my name is Martha Alu. We'll see you tomorrow.